Hey, let's use some classification. So now they may ask you to classify more than one way. So again, here are our two sets. We can either classify a triangle by angle measure. Again, angles, remember, are the openings there. We had either an acute, equiangular has all the same angles. A right triangle has one right angle, and an obtuse triangle has one obtuse angle. That's by angle. The classification by sides is either equilateral, where all sides are the same length, isosceles, where two sides are the same length, and scalene, where all three sides are different lengths. Okay, so notice angles, again, are the openings in the corner, how wide that opening is, and side length is the distance from one corner to the other. Those are our classifications, so again, make sure you have those in your notes. And let's try to classify. Classify each triangle in several ways. So that means maybe by side length and by angle measure. So if we look at this triangle here, the first thing I notice is I have a right angle marked here. So that makes it a right triangle. Okay, so by angles, this is a right triangle. The other thing I notice about that triangle is none of the sides are marked the same length. What type of triangle has no sides the same length? That is scalene. So this is a right scalene triangle. It's both a right triangle because it has a right angle and scalene because none of the sides are the same length. Okay, let's take a look at this triangle. Well, we don't have anything marked on our sides, but I'm going to teach you a trick here. Notice we have two angles marked, and those angles that are marked happen to be exactly the same measure. They're both 64 degrees. One thing that is a fact with geometry is that if you have two angles the same, that makes these two sides the same also. It's a property of isosceles triangles. If they have two sides the same, they're going to have two angles the same. Okay, so that tells me, first of all, looking at the angles, notice these are all acute. So that makes this is an acute triangle, but we also showed that it's an isosceles. So this is an acute isosceles triangle. So again, that's one property you'll want to go off of because we can't assume sides are the same length unless we have a property to tell us or if they mark it. And one property that does tell you is if you have two angles the same, that makes two sides the same. Let's classify this triangle. None of the sides are marked the same. They also marked none of the angles. Let's look at the angle measure so we can classify by angle. Is this obtuse, acute, right? Well, we don't have any right angles marked, so it can't be a right triangle. We do have one larger than 90 angle here, so that makes this an obtuse triangle. None of our sides are marked the same length, so if we're classifying by sides, that would make this a scalene. So this is an obtuse scalene triangle. Okay, next one. What markings do we have? Okay, so if we want to classify it based on angles, none of the angles are marked, but again here I'm going to teach you a fact about one of the properties of geometry, and that is, notice all of my sides are the same length. Well, kind of the same property applies that we used up here. If you have sides the same length, that forces angles to be the same. So since all three sides are the same, all three angles are the same also. So, and that is a fact. You can put that in your notes that anytime you have equilateral triangle, it's also equiangular. So this is an equiangular, equilateral triangle. If they asked to classify by angle, we would say equiangular. If they asked us to classify by sides, we'd say equilateral. If they want it in several ways, it's both equiangular and equilateral. Okay, here is our final triangle. Let's look at our angles first. Well, we have a right angle, so that makes this a right triangle. And then we have these two markings down here. So hopefully you remember that those markings indicate that these two angles are the same measure. Okay, and what did we talk about up here? So far, I'll start by classifying by angles. This is a right triangle. Okay. What about by sides? Well, remember we talked up here and we said that anytime two angles are the same measure, that forces two sides to be the same length. So because those angles are marked congruent, I can mark those sides across from them congruent. So not only is this a right triangle, but when I classify it by its sides, it forces it to be isosceles, having two sides the same length. Hi, Nicole. Oh, you were at the at a student club. Which club are you in?